Hello and welcome to Let's Review. Space-based RTS games are a relatively rare breed. In fact, I can only think of a few examples. There's the Homeworld series, which I have never played. There's the Sins of a Solar Empire series, which I have played. And those are the only ones I can name that aren't licensed properties. And I'll be honest, I don't know why. It seems to me a genre with a lot of potential. Ancient Space is one of the latest examples of the genre. But the question is, of course, is it actually worth your time? Well, to answer that, we start the same place we always do, with the gameplay. In Ancient Space, you command a fleet of ships as they battle inside an area of space known as the Black Zone. The gameplay of Ancient Space involves you controlling this fleet of ships. Now this is a fairly late game mission, so I've got access to quite a number of high-tech options. So for example, I have my Dreadnought back here. Now the ships in Ancient Space break down into 4 groups by weight class. So for example, my Dreadnought is an extra large ship. The same goes for my carriers. Other ship sizes include small ships, like my Lancers here, which are small fighter type craft. Medium ships, like my Rover, which is a construction class ship. And if I wished, there's also large class ships, such as this Corsair down here. In addition, there are buildings, which you've just seen me destroy some of the enemy buildings. Now, it's worth constructing some of your own. So, for example, if I use the Katarina here, which is one of my carriers, one of its abilities is to construct new platforms. So if I assign it to construct a station here, once that station is complete, I will have a number of options of how I can upgrade it. So for example, I can construct a detector to scan for stealth units. I can construct a repair station in order to heal my allies, an interdictor to disable enemy ships, a protector to protect my own ships and structures, and an artillery piece or a turret, which focus on larger units and smaller units respectively. Repair stations are what I have found most effective, so I'll build one of them. Now I just built a second Dreadnought, so you will notice they are both there. And they have the special ability of Proton Cannon, which allows me to target an enemy building and destroy it immediately. One of the most useful and versatile units is the Corsair, whose primary purpose is to capture enemy structures and ships. So for this mission, in order to activate this warp gate, I actually need to capture this structure. If I quickly zoom out, you will note that from here we can view all of the various sectors. Most missions, but not all, are broken up into several sectors. So in this one, for example, our objective is to get from Sector 1, over here, through Sectors 2 and 3, eventually to Sector 4, where we can exit through this primary warp gate over here. And now return to Sector 1. In order to do that, we have to activate the warp gates between each sector. In some missions you will encounter warp gates, and in some cases you will encounter wormholes which link the sectors. The primary difference between the two being that warp gates will quite often require you to complete some form of objective in order to access them, whereas wormholes are almost universally open. You will also sometimes encounter smaller wormholes which will only allow for the passage of small and medium units. So if I now demonstrate the process by which we travel to the next sector, we simply click on the wormhole, and our ships will automatically transit to Sector 2, which I can now go to. Here we encounter another group of enemy defences, but nothing that we can't handle, particularly as we have some larger units. However, it is wise to pull our rover back, as it is a defensive unit designed to build and heal. Now, I mentioned the Proton Cannon ability earlier, so I will demonstrate it now, because it's extremely effective against buildings and will in fact destroy them in a single use. Here we have a resource generation node, which is exactly the same as your standard node, except this one will increase our production of tritium. There are also ones that increase your energy production, and those will also boost your replicant count. Anyone who's played an RTS game before will notice that we have 2 resources and a population cap, which is what your replicants is. And fundamentally, that is the gameplay of Ancient Space. You have a number of different ships at your command and various objectives throughout the game. One other thing to note is this yellow glowing orb over here, a glowing anomaly. Certain ships, such as my rover, for example, are equipped with scanners and can go and scan that anomaly. If I quickly bring up the game menu, there is a list of the anomalies within the mission and the ones that you have found. So I found that one right at the beginning of the mission. These will offer various boosts throughout the mission. So for example, that one boosted my population cap. And fundamentally, that is it for the gameplay. In between the campaign missions, you will have the ability to upgrade your various ships, adjust the setup of your carrier, and choose which officers will be available to you during the mission. The upgrades that you can apply to your ships are, relatively speaking, quite limited. For example, if we look at our Dreadnought, we could upgrade its armor, upgrade the amount of damage it does to buildings, upgrade the amount of damage it does to extra large units, and if we had a sufficient number of titanium parts, we could also upgrade the amount of damage that it does to large units. Further upgrades involve upgrades to speed or simple boosts to armor. The upgrade system's relatively straightforward, but it does at least allow you to provide some variation on your ships. Whereas with the Dreadnought, you are available to get all of the upgrades for it. With the smaller ships, you will have to choose from a selection. The carrier, on the other hand, is significantly more variable. So for example, I've currently got extra damage versus large, and extra large in buildings, armor increased, and various other things, and we can alter those by spending modules. If we wished, we could also swap it entirely into an offensive setup, which boosts all of these, but reduces things like your energy rates, as well as increasing unit costs. It also alters the abilities that the ship has. Personally, I prefer to leave it in the defensive setup, because the ability to instantly create a ship, as well as the ability to repair your allies, is, to my mind, extremely useful. As for your officer selection, you will have a number of them available, different ones for different missions, and you can swap them out. Each one of these will provide a special ability for use during the mission. So for example, if I use him, then Colonel Edwards will give me a boost on all damage for all friendly units. I can also use Captain Marshall here, who will give me a temporary boost on damage and armor for all extra large class units, and Captain Yuri, who provides healing over time to all your units and structures, which is exceedingly useful. There is a limited number of uses for each of these abilities per mission, indicated by the number in the corner, with some abilities being available to use more often than others. Overall, the gameplay for Ancient Space is fun, but it's flawed. Its main problem is that at times it's very, very slow. It also runs into some pathing issues, and quite often it's difficult to order your units to a specific plane on the Z-axis. They'll often dive either far too low or rise far too high, making grouping defensively very annoying. That being said, when everything works properly, it's a lot of fun, especially later on when you can start throwing around some of the real heavyweight units. At the end of the day, it's far from the worst RTS combat I've ever encountered, but it's also nowhere near the best either. It's solid, but nothing more than that. The story of Ancient Space follows the tale of the Ulysses II, the leader of an expedition sent into the mysterious Black Zone, a region of space filled with a variety of bizarre anomalies that has begun to expand. Your mission while there is to search for the missing Ulysses I expedition, as well as discover why the Black Zone is expanding. As the setup goes, it's pretty good, and over the course of the game, a lot of your questions will be answered. Unfortunately, there is one major problem with the story: the characters. And what exactly have they done to annoy you this time? Nothing. I beg your pardon? The biggest problem is that they have nothing to do but spout exposition. As a result, I can't really tell you anything about their characters because they don't really have any. They're only there as talking heads to push the plot forward. And ultimately that's quite a bit of a letdown. The thing is, I actually understand completely why they were limited to this. Their engine, while clearly very good for rendering impressive looking starships, clearly was just never built to render human faces. However, I do actually have a solution for that little problem. Full motion video. You cannot be serious. Why not? Look, FMV has a dodgy reputation, and yeah, okay, that is for a damn good reason. That being said, there is no reason why it can't be made to work. Look, even if you're operating on a relatively small budget, as long as your script is good and your actors are decent, you can actually produce something quite interesting. Take, for example, some really old sci-fi shows, things like Blake 7, for example. Yes, the sets wobbled. Yes, the costumes were completely ridiculous a lot of the time. And yes, the effects have dated very, very badly. But I don't care. The scripts, for the most part, were excellent, the actors were fantastic, and as a result, the show absolutely still holds up, in spite of the fact that it was made on a budget of virtually nothing. And you honestly see that working? Absolutely. The thing is, the main story is actually pretty good on the whole. It's reasonably interesting, it's got a couple of decent plot twists, and it's paced quite well. I actually see quite a lot of potential in this universe, provided that they have the decency to ground it with some actual characters, rather than just a few talking heads who spout exposition. Overall, the story's kind of hit and miss, because there's a lot of positives, but there's no emotional core to it, which I think it does need to really sell it as a great story. I actually really quite like a lot of the designs for this game. The Balathon in particular has this really nice organic tech hybrid thing going for it that makes it simultaneously really kind of creepy, but also kind of beautiful. It's kind of like seeing a tiger in the wild. It's this elegant, beautiful thing that could utterly rip you apart and never feel any remorse about it. The rest of the designs are also pretty good on the whole, although you'll spend far too much time zoomed out to really appreciate the designs of a lot of the smaller ships. From a technical standpoint, Ancient Space looks pretty good on the whole. The weapon effects are nice, there's some really nice texture work, and the backgrounds are frankly spectacular. That being said, Ancient Space is not brilliantly optimized. While I was recording it, the frame rate dropped below 20 on a number of occasions, and granted without fraps running it did manage to stay above 30, it almost always fell well shy of 60. As an RTS, the lower frame rate is not as much of an issue as it is in some other genres, but I would prefer it to be a lot smoother. In addition, there's also a bug that makes one mission uncompletable, for the simple reason that a wormhole you need to exit the level will not spawn. This is a known bug, and I would appreciate if they got it fixed, because even though I was able to complete the mission on a replay, having to do that was a massive pain. I really need to mention the cast for this game. It's excellent. It's pretty small, but it includes Ron Glass, Diana Mayer, Dwight Schultz, and John Billingsley. That's cast members from Firefly, Starship Troopers, and 2 Star Trek series. Well, 3 technically if you include Barclay's appearances in Voyager. And honestly, as one of the small subset of Star Trek fans who actually think that Enterprise is superior to Next Generation, I'm actually really happy that they got Dr. Phlox involved in this. That being said, as I stated earlier, the cast doesn't really have a lot to do, and as a result, they don't really get to display their range. As for the music, it's really nice on the whole, and it has some really excellent tracks. However, you will notice it start to loop on a few occasions, especially if you play as slowly and carefully as I do. So, did I enjoy Ancient Space? Well, for the most part, yes. Should you buy it? This one's a bit tricky. It's definitely flawed, but given how few examples there are of the genre,
I think it might actually be worth your time to investigate it. That being said, if you're not sure, pick it up in a sale. If you can get it for less than a tenner, I would absolutely recommend it. And even at the £15 price point, it's probably worth a go. Now, if you'll excuse me, I fancy rewatching Blake 7. I'll see you later.